for whatever reason, I can't see everybody. So I can see you now only when you speak. So please go ahead. Anyway, first of all, thank you so much for being a guest on Drops. It's really great to have you on.
Thank you.
And I'm going to begin by asking you our first question. Can you please tell us about your journey from being an atheist in Liverpool who wanted to be an astronaut and how you came on the path to becoming a rabbi?
So, well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak. And I just want to say it's amazing what you've done here, and this group is just really incredible. And just kudos to you for putting this all together. And nobody told me that my mother-in-law was going to be on this. So I'm a bit nervous now. I've got to be careful what I say. So if we can bump it off, then I can tell you the story. Then you can hear what really is what really going on. But with her here, I have to be a little bit more circumspect. So I grew up in Liverpool in a sort of what you would call a secular family. We went to Shaul twice a year, maybe Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. Didn't do much else. We kept sort of at home, I would say. But that's about it. That's about the extent of my duty. We did do. We said Kiddush on a Friday night. That was I recall also, though, but not a lot more. And the background noise is that that I don't think it's coming from me. Does people hear that background noise? Yeah, there you go. I'm hearing an echo.
You're very not clear. Like it sounds like you're repeating yourself over and over when I listen to you.
Okay. Hold on a second. Maybe I have the wrong. Let's see. Settings.
I think there's an echo.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know how to fix that on my end. Hold on. Let's try this. Is that any better?
It's very soft.
Very soft.
But it's better. There's no echo.
That's better. Okay, fine. Well, hold on. Let me see if I can put my volume up as well. I know how to do that. Audio settings. Output volume. Let's input volume. Is that any better? Any louder?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good, great. So, as I say, I grew up in a very sort of secular but Jewish family, and I looked at myself as an atheist. I was very sort of I did A levels in maths, physics, and further maths. I was very scientific. I wanted to study aeronautical engineering at university, and as you said, I was ultimately hoping to be an astronaut. I happened to be at a Jewish school in Liverpool. And that's a long story in and of itself. I'll bore you with that bit. A rabbi came to my school when I was 16, and I can still hear an echo in the background. By the way, is somebody not muted?
Can you please all mute yourselves now? Or Rabbi, you know what? If I mute everybody and then maybe you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay, let's see if that's any better. No, it sounds like the echo's coming from me. Actually, what can you do? Okay, I'll just persevere. So Rabbi came to my school when I was 16, and there were maybe 7 or 8 of us in the class, in the Jewish studies class, and he asked us who believes in God. Now, I'd never had a rabbi address that question with me before. In my mind, Jewish studies until that point in my life were about King David and what you can and can't eat, but nothing more than that. And to me, like, well, what's God got to do with Judaism? That was sort of amazingly enough that I thought that way, but that is what I thought. And maybe 2 out of 8 put their hands up, and he says, "Who believes God wrote the Torah?" and none of us put our hands up. So he says, fine, over the next few weeks and months, I am going to prove to you that there's a God, and I'm going to prove to you that God wrote the Torah. And that was kind of interesting to me. I was like, well, okay, yeah, proof and scientific, and I'm into that type of thing. So let's see what you've got, Rabbi. So he started teaching evidence for God's existence, evidence that God wrote the Torah. And I was immediately very impressed. And I was so impressed that after 2 classes, I came to him, I approached him, and I said, Rabbi, I'm not going to be able to attend your classes anymore. I'm really sorry. They've been very enlightening, but I can't come anymore. And he said, why not? I said, because you're very convincing, and I don't want to be convinced. I'm very happy with my life. I go and watch Liverpool play at Anfield every other Shabbos, and I like my non-kosher Chinese food. And I think I had a non-Jewish girlfriend at the time, and I said I don't want you messing that up. I don't want you suddenly convincing me that God wrote the Torah. It's the last thing I need to know in my life. So he said, well, Jewish studies are mandatory in the school. I said, well, then I'll leave the school. And I really was ready to leave the school over this. I was not going to come to his classes under any circumstances. And so I got an exemption from Jewish studies. And but in the meantime, all my friends was still going to his classes. And so I had a few extra lessons a week free, which was great. And all my friends were attending his classes. And then after a few months, I don't remember how long, but after a few months, 6 months maybe, some of my good friends started wearing yarmulkes and started wearing tzitzis. And I felt like, oh my gosh, what has happened to these nice Jewish boys? What's got into them? It's crazy. Who would do such a thing? What's this rabbi done to them? And so I started a group with them whereby I was trying to talk them out of it, whereby I was trying to show them why God didn't write the Torah. And I would do all my research and all my background, get all my background information, and they would do their research. And it really was interesting. We had, we had a whole back and forth I think it was a Wednesday night, we would meet, and it was a stimulating conversation, but we didn't get anywhere. The rabbi invited me to his house for Shabbos. I would say it was perhaps the worst experience of my life. I hated every moment of it. I can't think of a moment that I enjoyed of that Shabbos experience. I was there for the whole of Shabbos, and it was just horrible, really horrible. I could give you 10 examples of things that happened on that Shabbos, but let me think of one if I can even. Yeah, I accidentally switched the light on in his bedroom. I don't know why. I went upstairs to the toilet and I thought the toilet was his bedroom. So I went in and switched the light on, and I realized it was his bedroom, obviously. And he happened to be there. So I said, oh, don't worry, I'll switch it off for you. And he said, no, you can't switch it off. And I said, why can't I switch it off? He said, it's Shabbos. And I said, yeah, but I don't keep Shabbos, so why shouldn't I switch it off? He said, no, I can't have somebody who's Jewish do something for me, to help me on Shabbos. So I said, and then he says, and don't worry. Anyway, we like sleeping with the lights on in our bedroom on Shabbos. I said, okay. I said, well, then why didn't you leave them on in the first place? And he was like, well, I don't know. Anyway, that was an example of I was of the type of experiences I had that Shabbos. It seemed to be just one disaster after another that Shabbos. But in the meantime, I was coming to coming towards the end of my upper 6th year for my A levels. And I don't know if people know what that means. I assume the English people do. The senior year in high school, I think you would say in America. And my friends were all becoming frum, and they were all going off to yeshiva. And I didn't know what I was going to do. at the end of my year, I had a scholarship to go study at Caltech in America to do aeronautical engineering. I had a year off. They'd offered me a year off, which I took. I was planning on being a ski instructor in Austria in November, but you can't really go skiing before November, December. Nowadays, even worse. Nowadays, with this global climate change, it's you know, you can't even go before January maybe. But anyway, in those days you could still ski in November, but I didn't know what I was going to do in between. And then the rabbi invited me for Pesach Seder, and I didn't want to go, and I made every excuse you could possibly imagine not to go to the Seder, but one way or another I ended up being there. And it wasn't gonna, it didn't start till like 10 o'clock, you know, in Liverpool. It's quite far north, so it didn't start till 10 o'clock. So I figured, okay, well then I might as well stay for the duration. Not going to make it for last orders in the pub. So I stayed, and at the time I happened to be living with a guy who was a heroin addict, and he was a pretty serious addict. I used to come in from school, and he would be sitting there, and his eyes were open, but all you could see were the whites of his eyes. They were like rolled up into his head, and all you could see was white. It's a bit scary, actually. So that is relevant to this to what I'm going to say next. So the rabbi started talking about the Seder. Now, I'd been to family Seders before, and we were, you know, as a family, we had no clue what we were doing and didn't mean anything to us. And we all felt it was a bit of a waste of time. Why are we doing this kind of old tradition? And so he really brought it to life. He talked about how the Seder is about freedom, and it's about personal freedom, and it's about breaking out of your own internal slavery, breaking out of your own addictions. And when he started talking about addiction, I started thinking of this sort of my roommate. And they started talking about how the Seder, each step of the Seder is pointing towards an understanding of how to break an addiction. And I was amazed, because everything that the Haggadah was saying felt like something incredibly true and relevant about this addict friend of mine. And I was like, how on earth could these rabbis 2,000 years ago have such insight and such wisdom into an addiction of the 20th century? I was really bowled over by it. And we were chatting about the Haggadah till about 3 or 4 in the morning. And I didn't notice the time go. I just loved it. And then he said to me, why don't you stay the night? Well, that was my cue to leave. I was like, no, hold on a second. Getting a little over enthusiastic here. I'm not staying the night, you know, because I knew there's going to be another Seder tomorrow, and I might enjoy that as well. And he might invite me for lunch. And I think that's, you know, I've come far enough. So I decided to walk home. And the only way home was through a particularly dangerous park in Liverpool at that time called Sefton Park. The rabbi's name was Rabbi Slew, by the way. Don't know if any of you know him. So a particularly dangerous park in Liverpool at that time. There were regular muggings in this park. Certainly at 3 in the morning, you don't want to walk through it. And it was a long walk home as well. I didn't live in the Jewish area of Liverpool. And but I figured better risk my physical life than my spiritual life. And so I walked through this park, and I picked up a big stick as I walked into the park. I still remember it. And every rustle of every leaf, I was like jumping, you know, ready to fight. And I got to the end of this park, and this is my epiphany. This was really my epiphany. This was just a total sort of turnaround in my life in this one moment almost. Was said to myself, it just suddenly struck me. Why am I so scared? Why am I scared of this rabbi? Why am I scared of Judaism? Why am I scared of Torah? If this rabbi can show me that Torah is true, if he really can, then fine. Then it's something I should know. I can decide what I want to do afterwards about it, but at least I should know. No point in hiding my head in the sand. And if he can't show me that Torah is true, then all well and good, even better. So I kind of, you know, it was Yom Tov, I guess. So a few days later, I kind of got in touch with the rabbi, and I said to him, "Look, Rabbi, you know I haven't come to your classes for years now, for at least 18 months maybe, and I know I've really been disrespectful and disinterested and uninvolved and disengaged, but you know I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to hear what you got to say. Let me give it a chance before I kind of throw it all away, before I kind of disappear off the Jewish map. I'm ready to give it a chance." So he started giving me private classes, and it didn't take long until I felt like, you know, there's enough here that I feel like I've got time off in the summer. My friends are all going to yeshiva. It just kind of all added up. I just felt like I got to go and check this out. I got to go and see for myself and be a little bit honest with myself over here. So I went that summer to Aish Torah in Jerusalem, and I planned on going for 6 weeks, and I stayed for almost 7 years. 6 weeks turned into almost 7 years, and you know, as you can imagine, I took to it straight away. It was like a fish in water. I just loved it from the minute that I got there, and never looked back. That's a long answer to a short question.
Wonderful, thank you. I know that you started HUK in 2001.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the biggest challenges in doing so?
Yeah, I actually HUK started in 1993.
Sorry.
That's okay. And and the way it started, it was it was a challenge to start with, because I felt like I was at Aish in Jerusalem, and I'd become a rabbi. I got smicha. I was married. I was running what we called the beginners program there, the program where people would come in off the streets, so we would kind of try and encourage them to get involved. And but I felt like there's too many cooks over here, you know, there's not enough work to be done, and there's too many people doing it. I felt like I want to go somewhere where I feel like I can make an impact, where I feel I can really contribute, where I feel I'm needed. And I looked around at my friends in England. I looked at my family in England. You know, of my cousins, I would guess that around 50% of them are married out. And certainly I have one from cousin out of maybe 100. I have a lot of cousins. My family's a very big family. So
Guest on here, Rabbi.
Sorry?
She was actually a guest on here.
Oh, very good. Okay, yeah. Chaya Hinda Allen, yeah?
Right.
That's right. So I have got one, but other than that, that's about it. So I just felt like there was no Aish in the UK, and I felt like I'd love to go and start. It was a bit daunting, you know. I was 24. I was 23 actually at the time, and I was kind of newly married, and my wife was expecting, and interestingly, part of what motivated me, part of what encouraged me, was I always wanted to get my father, alav shalom, interested and get him involved. There's kind of a joke in our family that my grandma, although she wasn't she was very respectful of Judaism, and she was very, very eager that my father would be a rabbi. She wanted him to learn to be a rabbi. And so much so that she took him out of school and put him into cheder instead. And he always resented that, because it meant that he had very little secular education and he couldn't go to university. So he always had in his mind, I'm his only son. He always had in his mind that his son is going to make up for that. His son is going to go to university. His son is going to have the secular education that he never had. And of course, his son didn't do that. Instead, he became a rabbi, which was, quite ironic. Hashem has a sense of humor. So I I wanted to get my father to come to Aish. And so I said to him, I said, let's make a deal. He always wanted me to come and see the secular world. Come on, you were 17 when you became religious. You never had a chance to see the other side of things. So I made a deal with him that he would come to Aish for a month, and I would go and work in his business. I said for 3 months. I told him 3 months. Really good deal, 3 for the price of 1. So firstly, I have a sister who gave me a whole guilt trip and said, well, you go and see your son for a month. She lives in Los Angeles. Why don't you come and see me for a month? So he split it 2 weeks, 2 weeks. So he only came for 2 weeks. And he said, look, if you think I want some rabbi coming into my business and ruining it for me, you know, that's not what I got in mind. He said, you don't have to work in my business. He said, if you want to come to England and have the baby in England, this was our first son, then you're welcome to stay with us. So he came for 2 weeks, so I was going to England for a few months. I kind of made that commitment. So I went to see my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Noach Weinberg, Alav Shalom, and I said to him, I'd like to try and set up Aish in the UK. And he was, I don't know if any of you ever knew him, but he was always Mr. Positive, Mr. Can-do, Mr. Enthusiastic, Mr. Trust in Hashem and anything's possible. And so very surprisingly, he said to me, don't do it. Don't do it. I said, why not? He said, you won't succeed. I said, why won't I succeed? He said, you just won't be able to do it in England. I don't believe that Aish is going to work in England. So I said, okay, can you give me more reasons why? And we talked back and forth. And what he always taught me was, with your Rebbe, you have to argue with your Rebbe. He was very big on that. He didn't want students who just kind of took what he said blindly, and whatever he said, you just do it. So like a good student of his, I went away and thought about it and came back to argue with him, to disagree with him. And he gave me other reasons. He said his main one was there are a bunch of skinflints in the UK. Nobody will ever give you any money. You won't be able to raise any money, and you need to raise money to do something like this. So I said, well, that's not my experience, and I was born and bred in the UK, how many times has the Rosh Hashiva been there? Yeah, probably a bit more respectful than that, but and he said, no, don't do it. So I went and thought about it again. I came back again and I said, look, Rosh Hashiva, this isn't making any sense to me. I'm sorry. Let's try again. And he was always happy to do that. So we had another discussion about it. And at the end of the discussion, I said, look, Rosh Hashiva, you have taught me that if I disagree with my Rebbe, I have to talk it out with him. But if ultimately I just don't see what he's saying, then I have to go with what makes sense to me. And he said, absolutely, that's what I've taught you. I said, well, then I'm going to go to England and try and set up Aish UK. And he said, he had a big smile on his face. And he said, they would go with my blessing. For him, a student of his who would argue with him, disagree with him, and maintain his own opinion through the discussion, that to him was success. That to him was success in education. His goal was to create independent Talmidim, Ha'midu Talmidim Harbe. He wanted Talmidim that thought for themselves, that had their own minds, that listened, that considered, that respected, that discussed, that thought about, but ultimately they had their own minds. And so I went to England, and whilst I was there over the 3 months, I was in Liverpool. My parents lived in Liverpool. I stayed with them in Liverpool. I remember I used to drive down to London twice a week for a day. So I used to drive in the morning, and I used to drive back in the evening. So it was, what's that? It was 3.5 hour drive there, 3.5 hour drive back. I did that twice a week. I think it was Siyata Dishmaya that I never fell asleep at the wheel. I mean, I remember times driving where I just couldn't keep my eyes open. But thank God we were, Matliach. It was all all siyata d'shmaya. It was just a matter of trying, of being moser nefesh, of being committed, of caring, of taking responsibility, and that's my principle in life. And again, I learned that from my Rebbe. But my principle in life is that if you're moser nefesh and you take responsibility, you'll get the siyata d'shmaya. You will be able to achieve the things that you want to achieve, and thank God, thank God, it was just from day one. Just you saw Yad Hashem throughout the whole growth and development and building of HUK. And you said kind of what were the challenges. I mean, there were so many challenges, so many difficulties, and for the most part, there was, you had Seed were doing some work here. JLE was a very, very small organization. Seed was very small. There was very, very little Kiruv going on in the UK. And so it was a matter of sort of just marketing first, just getting the concept of Kiruv out into this country. From people weren't that interested because they didn't necessarily believe in it. And secular people weren't interested because they didn't want to be Makarev. So who'd you go and raise money from? Where'd you go and find funds to do something that both secular Jews and from Jews aren't necessarily interested in supporting? It was, and I don't have the personality for fundraising. It's not me. I'm not a go-getter. I'm not outgoing. I'm an introvert. But I again, I learned from my Rebbe that you do what you need to do. You can't worry too much about what your talents are and aren't. If something needs to be done, you go and you figure out how to do it. And that's kind of what I did. So I can't tell you how I did it. It was siyata d'shmaya, but thank God somehow it worked. I don't take any credit. God gets the credit. I'll just tell you a little story on that, which is that I heard from our Rosh Hashiva that, again, he said this at my Chag HaSmichas, that really always sat with me and sits with me to this day. He said that when he was from a family of Chassidim, even though he was a big Litvak himself, he was from a family of Slonim Chassidim. And his Rebbe was Rav Hutner in America, and Rav Yaakov Weinberg was his Rebbe. Real sort of went to the Litvish yeshivas. He says that he came to America he came to Israel in the 1950s, and some of his cousins came to meet him when he got off the boat. I don't mean that metaphorically. And he his Chassidish cousins, and he was clean shaven at the time. And he said that these cousins of his came to visit him many years later when he had set up Aish, and Aish was growing and developing and makareving all the people that it was makareving. And he said that these cousins came to him and they said, Noach, we don't understand. They said, how have you done this? How have you been successful? They said, we know Chassidish Rebbes, great Chassidish Rebbes, who had written on their tombstone, I was Zoicha to bring 5 Neshamois Tachas Kamfei Shechina. I was Zoicha to Makarev 5 Jews. These are great men. They said, you remember you got off the boat, you didn't even have a beard. And you Makarev thousands. How have you done it? So he said, I'll tell you a little mashal. He said, you walk around Yerushalayim nowadays, Baruch Hashem. I mean, this is 30 years ago he told this story. Thank God it's still true today. He says, everywhere in Yerushalayim you go, you see cranes. These big cranes. Thank God we're building. Klal Yisrael is building Yerushalayim still. And he said, you see these giant cranes. And if you look, you go down at the bottom, you'll see the cranes lifting a ton of bricks. But there's always a guy there who's going to guide the bricks into place. The crane's lifting it, but the guy's guiding it into place. So he says, you have a tipesh, you have a fool who looks at that and says, wow, look at that guy. He's Hercules. He's Shimshon Agibor. He's lifting a ton of bricks. He says you have the Chacham who realizes, no, it's the crane that's lifting it. This guy's just doing a little bit here and there. He says the same thing. He says, the Bnei Shalom's children are estranged from him, are lost, are disconnected.
You don't think he wants them back? You don't think he's going to do everything that he can to bring them back? He says he's the one bringing them back. Not me, not you, not us. I just get to be the little guy there who's touching the bricks here and there, and it gets to look like I did it. I get to look impressive. Looks as though I did something. I didn't do anything, but it looks like I did. And to me, that's the way I've seen things all the way through the work that I've been doing, is not just from a place of humility, but from a place of reality. It's just the case. What have I really done? It's like, if I can think of all the hashgacha and all the siyata d'shmaya, and it's been immense. And I'm just grateful that I have had the opportunity to be a part of things, and still do have the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. I know that you left Aish, I think in 2006, and you started Tikkun.
Yes, that's correct.
Can you tell us why you did that and a little bit about Tikkun, and for those that aren't familiar with the three principles, what they are?
Yeah. Okay. So my late wife was diagnosed with cancer in 1998, and she passed away in 2001. And that was an incredibly, it was an incredible experience, those 3 years. Let's put it that way. I wouldn't, there's a lot of adjectives I could use. It was painful. It was overwhelming. It was excruciating. It was uplifting. It was beautiful. It was almost any adjective you can think of, I would apply to those 3 years at both extremes of the scale. But above all, I would say it was a growth experience. It was enlightening. It changed me in many, many ways. And it opened me up and made me see the world differently, and made me see my life differently. And thank God, the blessings that time has brought me have just been incredible and never ending. I just started, as you start to see things differently, and as you start to see the world differently, you reflect on what you're doing. And, my Rosh Hashiva taught me, he didn't teach me really, the Messiah Shashaim says it, that you should do a cheshbon nefesh every single day. And he used to say, my Rosh Hashiva, that you should ask yourself every day, what are you living for? He says, and you shouldn't just give the answer you gave yesterday. You should have a new answer today. Now, it might happen to be the same as yesterday. That would be a coincidence if it was. But you need to start fresh. What does life mean to me? What am I doing? Why am I here? What's important to me? What matters to me? What are my priorities? What are my responsibilities? You start again. You look at it all again. And so I did a really sort of big cheshbon nefesh during that period. It was an enforced cheshbon nefesh, but I'm grateful that it was enforced upon me. And I just had a lot of insights and saw things differently. I'll give you just a couple of examples in terms of how I saw the work I was doing differently, and how I saw Kiruv differently. And I'm not necessarily referring to particular organizations here. I'm talking very personally as to how I saw what I was doing. I felt like I looked at myself, a long, hard look in the mirror, and I felt like, yes, I am makaraving people, and yes, I have makaraved lots of people. But have I made them into healthier human beings? Are they stable? Are they emotionally healthy? Have I made them into better people? You could say the keeping Torah mitzvahs, and maybe you might want to define that as better in and of itself. But have I changed them in a deep way? And I didn't have good answers to any of these questions. I started to see, and when I looked at it carefully, I started to see a lot of recidivism, a lot of people who had become frum and then lost their way. And I sometimes found that they were had become disillusioned and were actually less Jewish than when they started on the journey. It was actually a negative. The process ended up being negative for them. I started to wonder, which I'd never considered before, about what I might call collateral damage, which is the impact that McCalving one person has on those around them, has on their family. You will see sometimes, no question about it, where people become from and their family become from. But you will also see sometimes where people become from and their families become negative, and their families become, against Judaism and against being from. And I all that was spinning in my head, and I didn't feel I had answers to it all, but I didn't feel that I could carry on in the way I was going without good answers to it. So I decided to change what I was doing. I decided to open a new organization that I called Tikkun. The reason I called it Tikkun was because there were three areas that I was focused on that I felt all actually fitted the word Tikkun. One was, I felt like I want to teach Jews that Judaism is about growing and development and being masakin yourself and sort of fixing yourself as a human being, becoming a better and greater human being. I felt that that Judaism was also about being a role model and a role model for those around you. And I also felt that Judaism was about making a difference in our world and contributing to a better world. That we Jews see ourselves as a Memleches Kehanim, an Am Kadosh, that our role is to bring this world to godliness. Our role isn't necessarily to just kind of lock ourselves up in our own little homes and do what we do over there, but I wanted to sort of point towards a broader sense of what Judaism is about. And really, again, this was all ideas that I'd learned from my Rosh Yeshiva. When he started Aish, or when I got to Aish, actually, in 1984, the mission statement of Aish in Jerusalem in those days, the mission statement of Aish International was, I remember it, have it memorized. It's only a short thing, but because this is what attracted me. This is what got me into Aish in the first place, and really into Judaism as well, was to, this was their mission statement, to reawaken the Jewish people to its ancient mission of being a light to the nations. Now, I found that incredibly inspiring. I found that incredibly, that excited me. That was really powerful for me. I'm an idealist at heart, and I want to contribute, and I want to do something with my life. And I felt here's an opportunity for me to do that. Not just to do that, but to do that as part of the greatest endeavor for changing the world in Jewish history, in world history, the greatest endeavor that's ever been undertaken, the Jewish people, to change our world, to bring values to our world, to bring godliness to our world. And so I wanted an organization that would focus on these things and focus on doing outreach in that way. My goal was outreach, but trying to teach people that this is what Judaism is about. And I felt, again, another change that I had in myself, in my attitude, was prior to this, to me, Kiruv was what I would call confrontational Kiruv. The way I would do Kiruv was, I know what's true and you don't. And it's my job to teach you what's true and then to insist that you accept it. Now, truth be told, if someone hadn't done that to me, I don't think I'd be here today. So that's why I say I'm not coming down on one side of the fence or the other over here. But I felt for me, that didn't resonate with me doing that anymore. I didn't want to go out and be fighting people. I wanted to try and share with them something that I felt would resonate with them. I wanted to try and share with them something I felt would lift them and inspire them and motivate them to want to make their own judgments and their own decisions and move in the direction of Judaism themselves. And so that's kind of what motivated me to create this organization, Tikkun. Now, I'll just add one more thing that you mentioned, Joyce, and that is that around this time, let me take a step back. Again, sorry to keep referring back to my Rebbe over here, but everything that I know comes from him. So, I have to keep quoting him, I'm afraid. He always felt one of his big things that he was very, very insistent on was the Sheish Mitzvahs Tamidiyos, the 6 constant mitzvahs. And he would really push all the guys at Aish to be focused on that. That Judaism is about relationship with Hashem. That you must be focused on developing your relationship with Hashem, on building your relationship with Hashem. He also used to talk about you have to know what you know. You have to have your own mind, your own perspective. He also used to talk about free will. You have to make your own choices. You have to take responsibility for your own choices. And he was always looking for ways to teach people this. By his own admission, he knew what he wanted, but he didn't know how to get it across. And he was tremendously frustrated with that. Throughout his life, throughout his educational career, he was frustrated that he did not know how to get these things into people in the way that he saw that he needed to. So he was always saying to us, kind of Talmidim, go and find me ideas. Go and find me something that's helpful. Go and find me something that works. Go and find and come and tell me about it. So I happened to stumble across at that time, and that's a long story how I did, and I'm not going to bore you with that. But I happened to stumble across something called the 3 principles, innate health, and it had a massive impact on me personally. It really, what I think it does, and what I think it helps people with, is it awakens them to their own neshama. It awakens them to an experience of their own neshama. That's certainly what it helped me do. And it's what it helped my wife do. And the people that we teach it to, it's what I see it helps them do as well. In a very, very real way, in a very immediate way, in a very tangible way. Until then, I felt like when I was teaching the 6 constant mitzvahs, or when I was teaching Know What You Know, I felt I was teaching ideas. I felt I was teaching theories. I felt I was teaching concepts. Nowadays, I feel like I'm teaching something that means something to me and that I can share. I feel I can genuinely share this with people. So I also felt, as a rabbi and as in the work I was doing pastorally, although I never was a rabbi of the community, but even when you're doing kiruv, you come across a lot of pastoral work, people suffering, people struggling, people going through crises and challenges and hardships in their lives that you have to support them in. I always struggle with that. I just didn't know how to help people really. And I would send them to this therapist, to that therapist, and I was disappointed. Every now and then there would be someone who I felt got helped, but for the most part, I just felt like, if somebody came along to me and they said they're suffering from depression, or they said they're suicidal, or they said they're addicted to gambling or to drugs or to whatever, I would there would be my body would just slump almost, and I would just feel like, oh no, I don't know what to do. I felt so discouraged, and I was meeting people like that all the time. Having come across this understanding, this 3 principles understanding, I feel so much hope for people in these situations. I feel so much more empowered to support them and to guide them and to help them and assist them in these challenges. And so when I started Tikkun, I realized that these 3 principles that had been so helpful for me needed to be a part of it. My Rosh Hashiva was still alive at that time. So I went back to him with this and I said to him, look, Rosh Hashiva, I found something that I think is going to be really helpful for people. And he said, tell me about it. And I started telling him about it, and he's really interested and really excited by it. And he said, I want you to go and learn more, go and become an expert in it. and then come back and tell me about it more. I want to hear more. I want you to become an expert in this, because I want you to potentially teach this to others. And I did. I went and I learned more. And unfortunately, it was just around that time that he became quite ill with his cancer. And I never really saw him again after that. You know, he was living in Eretz Yisrael and I was living in England. And I just, you know, and he got sicker and sicker, and it just, the opportunity never came up, and I never was able to go back to him. But I do feel quite motivated, especially as, you know, one of his last instructions to me were go and find out more and learn more and you know, teach this to people. I feel motivated to do a lot more of that, and it forms a bedrock of my organization, Tikkun.
You know, we have Sue Lachman here who does it in Israel, 3 principles. I think she's on now, and maybe later on we're going to open up for question and answers. Okay. I know you have a program in Tikkun called Repairing the World that encourages volunteering programs within and outside the Jewish community that not only include Jewish care, but also charities for homeless, for asylum seekers. Could you tell us a little bit about this, please?
Yeah, sure. I know this can sometimes be a little controversial, but everything that I do, I like. Certainly, anything that's controversial, I check in with Das Torah, and certainly my Rebbe was very much behind this. There's 2 things really here. One is that, and this is the secondary thing. Let me start with the secondary thing, and then I'll say what I feel is the ikka. We have done various programs, and I'm doing less of it now because I'm focused on rabbinic training nowadays. But we still have this program, which is to encourage Jews to go out and volunteer in the non-Jewish world. To go, in particular, we have a program called Light of a Life, which is during the winter holidays, and the concept behind it was that that during the winter holidays, you know, it's a non-Jewish holiday time. And it's family time for the non-Jews, and organizations, there are less volunteers available, and there's no reason why at Christmas time a Jew shouldn't go and volunteer. You know, it's not our holiday. We don't do that type of thing. So we are available. The Jewish community is available to fill the gaps in the non-Jewish community. I am a very big fan of Akaz Tov. I would say maybe perhaps above all else, that's what I learned from my Rebbe, the concept of Akaz Tov. It is maybe my most important value. I have a lot of values. I wouldn't like to say it's definitely, but it's certainly way up there. I feel strongly that that, you know, my grandparents came to this country 100 years or so ago as immigrants. This country had no obligation to take them in. Didn't have to accept them, didn't have to give them voting rights, didn't have to give them citizenship, but it did. And I feel that I have the life I have today, at least in materially, because of that kindness, because of that welcoming. The United Kingdom welcomed my family in, my grandparents in. I feel Akaz Tov for that, and I feel a responsibility to give back. And for me, this type of program is a type of program that I feel is an opportunity to give back with. And I just love the opportunity of doing that and encouraging people, because Jews, we're all in the same boat. You know, we all, pretty much every Jew in the UK is only there because their ancestors were allowed to come and settle here and to become citizens and to have rights, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel that we should all kind of feel that way. We should all feel that sense of gratitude, and so
that's a huge Kiddush Hashem.
I think it's a Kiddush Hashem as well. I wouldn't do it just because it was a Kiddush Hashem. I do it because I think it's the right thing to do, but it ends up being an incredible Kiddush Hashem, but it's a Kiddush Hashem in 2 ways. It's a Kiddush Hashem in that the non-Jewish world sees that Jews want to contribute and give back. But it's also a Kiddush Hashem in that secular Jews see that from Jews have broader interests than just their own little community. And that's the thing that the secular Jews struggle with. it's one of the things that I struggled with. I felt Judaism is so parochial. It's so small-minded. It's such a small little world, the world of Torah Judaism, that why would I want to lock myself in a box like that? And I feel a program like this shows secular Jews that you don't have to. You want to get more involved in Torah, you want to get more involved in Judaism, that's great. You want to do mitzvahs, you want to learn Torah, fantastic. Doesn't mean you have to lock yourself in a box. And I feel that reassures secular Jews when they see that. And I feel that is itself a Kiddush Hashem.
Fantastic. Couldn't agree with you more, Rabbi. Can I ask you, in 2018, you started the Rabbinic Training Academy.
Yeah.
Tell us why you started this and a little bit about it.
Sure. I felt, again, I keep coming back to my Rebbe, but he is by far the single biggest influence in my life. He always pushed us. You've got to make a difference. You've got to make a contribution. You've got to make the biggest contribution you can. And I've kind of got that in my bones. And so for about 7 or 8 years, I was doing tikkun. And I was running programs that were about quality, not quantity, about and really in a rich way, touching Jews in a deep way and getting them involved. And you know, in terms of Kiruv, it was very successful. But it was small. It was small. And I felt I want to do more. Again, I've got this voice ringing in my ear, you know, I can't get it out. Just this voice of you got to do more. You've got to, the Jewish people needs more. We live in a generation that's struggling and you know, it's all hands on deck. And so I was always looking for how can I give more? I don't want to just jump in the deep end and say, let's try this, let's try that. I wanted to kind of think about something that genuinely I felt would be a meaningful contribution. And I'll tell you what I was inspired by. I was inspired by Rabbi Akiva. He's been my inspiration since I became frum. I called my first son Akiva after him. And just, he's always been something of a role model for me. And I thought about it and I realized that what happened with Rabbi Akiva was, this is just an insight I had, just occurred to me one day, that he had, as we know, the famous story, he had 24,000 Talmidim, and they all died in a plague, coronavirus. I mean, I guess, thank God, this is nothing like that plague, for everybody to die. Because whatever reason, whatever reason, he, dare I say it, I don't mean this as harshly as it sounds, but he failed. He somehow, some way, he didn't succeed in his education. What did he do? I mean, you would think that would be enough to make any person give up and you know, just go into full-time learning and forget about it anymore because you know, that wasn't a success. 24,000 Talmidim and they all died. But he didn't do that. He, as we know, he went around Eretz Yisrael and he found 5 Talmidim. And he decided that quality was better than quantity. He decided that 5 was better than 24,000. And those 5 Talmidim were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rabbi Elazar ben forgotten, and Rabbi Yossi. And he and through them, he built the Mishnah. He built the Mishnah that 2,000 years later still is our bedrock of Torah. Through 5 people, through 5 Talmidim. And I just felt, you know, we Jews have always been about quality, not quantity. You know, if you judge truth by quality, by quantity, we'd all be Christians. But we're not. We're a small nation, but that doesn't mean we're wrong. Truth comes is more often than not found in the minority. You know, Avram was an Ivri. What does Rashi say that means? He stood on one side of the river and everybody else stood on the other. And they said, you're wrong. And he said, no, I'm sorry to tell you, you're all wrong. I'm the only one that's right around here. And you know, he got 5 Talmidim. And through those 5 Talmidim, he changed Jewish history. He absolutely changed the course of Jewish history with just 5 people. And I felt, you know what? It's about leadership. It's about training leaders. It's about change, that my contribution could be training a group of future leaders who can go out and make a difference. You know, in a not in the way that Rebbe Akiva's Talmidim did, but you know, in some small way. And I got really inspired by that. And so, and as I looked around, you know, my son had just got smicha, and I looked around at him and his friends, and I felt like these are our next generation of rabbis. You know, they don't really know much. They don't really know anything. You know, that I didn't feel they were properly trained even. You know, I felt like, what time are we going till, by the way? I just want to keep 3 more minutes.
Yes, Rabbi, please go on. I've got one more question to ask you, and then I want to open it up.
Okay. Oh, fine. Okay. Fine. So, I just, you know, I looked at them and I felt like, and this was my thing. This was kind of, again, just another insight I had. I looked at doctors, and we would never ever take a doctor out of medical school who's learned all the theories of doctoring, and he could be have passed with 100% in every exam. You would not send him to go and do open heart surgery on somebody straight out of medical school. You never dream of such a thing. You'd be mad. Yet we take rabbis straight out of rabbinical school, and we expect them somehow to go and sit with somebody who's suicidal and support them and know what to do. To take somebody who's an addict and know how to help them. To take somebody who's a victim of abuse and know how. Take somebody who's gay and know what to say. It's insane. I just felt it's madness. The Halavadi were trained in these things. We don't even train them in these things. But even if we did, we train them in a vacuum. We train them in a theories. They don't have any ongoing mentoring. They don't have any support so that they can grow into their roles, so they can grow in their positions, be it rabbis who are community rabbis, be it kiruv rabbis, or be it rabbis in schools. It's all the same. It's all the same. A, we don't train them in the realities of our world today, and B, we don't mentor them as they get started in their lives. And I just took as a model what we do with doctors, you know, residency in America or junior doctors over here in the UK. They get to be looked after, taken care of. Try things, but try things while they're being watched, so they can't go too wrong, so they can't make too many mistakes. And just to give you one example, but I could give you 1,000 examples for myself, from my own personal experience. I came to the UK with no training in any of this stuff. I knew Basar B'Chalav inside out, so I could tell you what happens if you know, a drop of milk falls into your cholent. But to sit me in front of somebody who's gay, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I can guarantee you, in 30 years of being a rabbi, I've met a lot more gay people than I have asked shilas about milk dropping into the cholent. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of our world today. And so I came to the UK and I was teaching classes. And after one of my classes, after about a year or two of being here, a young man came to me. And he said, you know, Rabbi, I just don't feel like living anymore. I don't see the point in life. And I didn't know what to do. You know, I said to him, well, tell me about your life, and tell me about his life. And I said, well, you know, you got everything to live for, and look, this is wonderful, and that's wonderful, and it's great. And I kind of talked him through it all. And at the end of it all, he said, well, thank you for your time, you know, and maybe you're right. And he made some good points. And a week later, he threw himself in front of a tube and killed himself. And that type of story and that type of experience just points me towards the fact that we have a responsibility to train our rabbis better than we're training them. They are in positions of responsibility. They have in a way, perhaps even more than doctors, but at least as much as doctors. They're going to have people coming to them who are suffering, who are struggling, who are suicidal, who have eating disorders, who are going through, you know, the craziest experiences in their lives. And I think we need better trained rabbis than we have. And that's why I started this Rabbinic Training Academy.
Okay, so I am going to open up now to anybody if they have any more questions. You can unmute yourselves if you Shirley, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I just have a couple of questions. What's next on your agenda? Because everything you touch seems to turn to more kiruv.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. To me, life is a journey, and like I say, cheshbon nefesh. Every day you wake up and you ask yourself, "What am I living for?" And it might be different to yesterday. You don't change commitments that you've got. I don't think to myself, well, do I still want to be married to the woman that I committed to 20 years ago? That you don't do in your cheshbon nefesh.
Careful, Shaul, careful.
When you've got commitments. But everything else is up for grabs, so I don't know. I'm looking forward to what's next. When I've found it, I'll tell you.
Okay, and the other part of my question is also your family that you grew up with. Did you bring them back to their roots too as you made your journey, or?
Well, as I said, two things I said kind of as I was talking. Firstly, I mentioned that I have one cousin out of 100 who's still from. I think I had quite an influence with her in getting her involved. But for the most part, no. And I think a big part of the reason is something I mentioned earlier, which is what I call collateral damage. I just think I was a bull in a china shop with my family. I didn't have a clue what to do. Nobody guided me what to do. I just ran in there like, this is true. This is Torah. This is what's right. My sister, what are you doing with a non-Jewish boyfriend? You got to get rid of him. It's terrible. He's a goy, whatever it might have been. And I just think, unfortunately, I put myself in a position that it was very hard to come back from. It's very hard to come back from once I'd gone down that road. I think it's a terrible shame. To this day, I think it's a terrible shame that my parents were never zeicher to sort of become Shomer Shabbos and Shomer Mitzvahs before they passed away. But at the same time, they have their own zechuyos. They have a lot of zechuyos. My parents. There's a lot of incredible goodness they've done in their lives, and I'm sure that they have their wonderful chelek in Olam Haba also.
Anybody else? Any questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask, Rabbi.
Yes.
How do you approach the gay problem?
On one foot, on one leg.
Listen, I'd like to hear even more, but this I think is something very.
Yeah, it's not something that I'm going to do in 5 minutes. It's very. I'll tell you.
Hey, Joyce, can you come back?
So I'll say what I do with my rabbis, and here's what I feel is the most important thing. With my rabbis, I found 6 gay people, and I asked them to come and share their stories with us. 4 of them were from. 4 of them were from. 4 of them are what I would call Haredi, actually, and actively Haredi. Not they were Haredi, they are Haredi, but they're gay. One of them was Haredi and turned against Judaism because of her situation, and the other one had was no Jewish background whatsoever. They're all Jewish. This one, Nebuch, the one who has no Jewish background whatsoever, she's actually the niece of a colleague of mine. He used to be the head of Aish in New York, and she's married to a Muslim girl, unfortunately. So it's a gay intermarriage. But anyway, putting all that aside, what I did was I said, I'd like you to come and just share your stories with us. It's all I really want from you. And they came and they shared their stories, these 6 guys. Well, 4 men and 2 women. And what was interesting was, I'll just share one thought because this was really touching for me. 4 Haredi guys spoke first. And every single one of them said that they had either contemplated suicide or attempted suicide. Every one of the 4 of them. And the stories they told were just horrific. One of them told a story about how he had a chavrusa, and he was loving learning together, and he loves Torah learning, this guy. And the Chavrusa's rabbi found out he was gay and told him he had to stop learning with him, and he couldn't learn with him anymore. Anyway, they were just they told stories over and over again of how they were just turned away and turned away and turned away. And credit to them that they've stuck with it. Credit to them that they've stuck with their commitment to Judaism in spite of their circumstances. So they immediately after they all spoke was the girl who has no connection to Judaism whatsoever. Now, I said that her uncle used to run Aish in New York, and she knows me as well. She used to work for me at Aish here in the UK. So she said, you know, I just have a question. Before I tell you my story, I have a question for everybody here. She said, you know, I am not a religious Jew at all. She said, but I have been around religious Jews, and my uncle is a rabbi, and I know Shaul, he's a rabbi. She said, it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, that religious Jews, one of their goals when it comes to secular Jews is to try and get them involved, is to try and change them, is to try and draw them in, is to try and bring them into the religious community. She said, that's what I see. She said, so it amazes me that I am seeing 4 men here, one after the other, who are eager to be involved, who are eager to engage in Judaism, and the community is turning them away, and the community is pushing them out. It was so powerful for me to hear that, you know. And so here's the thing: I feel that, I'll tell you one story from our Rosh Yeshiva that I feel says it all in my mind. I have a colleague who many years ago was heard about a gay Jew, very wealthy gay Jew, and he wanted to go and potentially see if he would contribute to Aish Torah. So, but he came to me and he said, but he's gay. You know, maybe we shouldn't take money from him even if he wants to give it. And I said to him, why not? What's that got to do with anything? He said, well, I want to go and ask the Rosh Yeshiva. I said, okay, well, let's go together. So we went to speak to Lev Noach. And so he, my friend puts the scenario to him. We've got this guy we know who's gay. Can we take money from him for Aish Torah? So Rav Noach looks at him, and this was Rav Noach's genius in my mind. He looks at him and he thinks for a minute. He says, "Come over here. I want to tell you a secret." So he says, "Yeah, what is it?" And he whispers in his ear. He says, "Do you know? Don't tell anybody, but we take money from people who don't keep Shabbos." And to me, that was such a powerful statement. You know, it's like, why have you got issues with somebody who's gay that you don't have with somebody who doesn't keep Shabbos? Somebody doesn't keep Shabbos, you say, Nebuch, he's a secular Jew, he's disconnected, he's lost, let's educate him, let's bring him in, let's try and guide him, let's try and makarav him. Why do you have any other issue than that? So how do you have any other attitude than that towards somebody who's gay?
We are afraid of what it will show our children, the families.
It's my opinion, and again, this is a lot longer discussion. You know, I think that our community has gone a wrong direction with this, because I think we have taken on some of the values of the secular world. I think we have accepted upon ourselves, and I do not believe this is true, that gay is a metzius, that homosexuality is a metzius. It's a psychological reality. People are born gay. It's a gene. It's who they are. They can't do anything about it. Nebuch, you know, shame. I don't think that's true at all. I don't think that's true. Now, do I advocate what do they call it? Therapy, realignment therapy, or something like that to try and make them heterosexual? Absolutely not. I think that'd be a disaster. But I don't take on board that somebody is gay and therefore Judaism never has anything to offer them, or Judaism is harsh for them because they can never get married, they can never have love, they can never have a relationship, which is what you'll hear people say. I don't think that's true. I think that sexuality is more fluid than that. I think human sexuality is a very fluid thing. And I don't believe it's like you are one or the other. I believe there's leeway. I have rarely met a gay person and it's funny, every single time I come across them, I'm not saying it's everyone, it's not everyone, but I have more often than not, gay people I've met, men, have had issues with their father, have had challenges with their father, have not had love from their father, have not, whatever you want to call it. I just think that in understanding, the understanding I have with the three principles nowadays, I feel that all of our experience comes through thought, including our sexuality, and thought is a very fluid experience. I mean, I'm putting that really, I'm saying something, I shouldn't say it so glibly and so blasely, but in the 2 minutes you give me to talk about it, you know, that's all I can say.
You're welcome again.
Okay, thank you. In short, let me say it in short. In short, homosexual sexual activity is an issa deraisa, is a Torah prohibition. For a person to have feelings towards another person of the same sex is not. And some, just because somebody breaks Torah law does not mean that they're Russia, does not mean that they're not somebody who we want to welcome in, be kind to, draw close, educate, love, care for, and welcome them as absolutely a member of the Jewish community like anybody else.
Can I ask something, please?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have an issue with the fact that you call your organization Tikkun. The word has been monopolized by the Reform movement. Its association with it is very strong. Their publication is called Tikkun. I think it's a mistake to call it by that name.
That is true in America. It's not true in the United Kingdom. The word tikkun has very little association with the Reform movement in the UK. People brought this up at the time. I felt I'm a UK organization. I did consider it. I did ask the Rabbonim about it. And I felt that the message of the name was so important to me that if I was in America, I would never have called it tikkun. You're absolutely right. But in England, there is, I would say, zero association with the Reform movement in England.
The publication is available in England.
It is available in England. I know, and it's becoming more, but it's not well known. It's not well known. Go and ask your standard Jew in the UK, your standard secular Jew in the UK, what do you associate with tikkun? They will not tell you the Reform movement, and they won't tell you the publication either.
I wonder, because the concept of tikkun olam is the essence of the attitude of
yeah.
Anyone who has been exposed
to they've monopolized it. Absolutely, yes. They've monopolized it. But in the same way as, you know, the Zionists monopolized the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, doesn't mean to say that they're wrong. You know, that it's not a mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael. So exactly. So just because the Reform movement have monopolized the concept of Tikkun Olam doesn't mean to say it's not a mitzvah and it's not part of Judaism.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to give the opportunity for anybody else if they have a question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Have a question at the moment. We do know each other from in.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you recognise me? Hello.
I do. No, you're a bit blurry. Your camera's a bit blurry, but yes, I still recognise you. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I know this may be a big question, and if you can't answer it in a short period, I realise it is a big question. Can you just, and I've forgotten, because a few years since we've been together, the three principles in 3 sentences? I know it's terrible. It's terrible. All right, 2 sentences for each principle.
Oh, okay, fine. The 3 principles are mind, consciousness, and thought.
Oh yeah, mind, consciousness, and thought. Yeah.
Mind is, in simple terms, God. Mind is the greatness, the spiritual greatness of this universe, the formless energy of the universe. My feeling is that is the essence of the 3 principles. Mind. Thought is, I would call Olam Hazeh. Thought is the ability that we human beings have to create concrete experiences for ourselves in this world. Our only experience of this world is through thought. we have the ability to experience beyond thought in a spiritual world, but our only experience of this world is through thought. Nevuah transcends thought, for example, and consciousness is our soul. Consciousness is the human soul that has the ability to have independence and experience and connect to God. Those are the three principles. What one does with them and how they're helpful for people in teaching them is a whole different question.
Yeah, I recognise it all. Thank you so much. Yeah, it all comes back. Thank you so much.
Good, great.
Thank you.
Rabbi Rosenblatt. Rabbi Rosenblatt.
Yes,
I don't know
sorry.
if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
If I were to want to recommend the three principles of innate health to someone who was living in Manchester, how would I go about directing them?
Let's think. I don't know per se of everybody in Manchester that's doing it. The person I'm Nogay Badova, so I take that from the outset. But the person in England who I most recommend is my wife. I just think she's the best one there is. That's where I would start. But if you want me to try and come up with other recommendations, I'm happy to as well. But that's what I would recommend as a starting point.
And how would one contact your wife, or?
I guess you could try email her, or if you want to get my email address from Joyce, I don't know. I'll tell you her email address. I might as well just tell you her email address. It's Chana, CHANA, at crpractice.com.
Right. And what if this person is not actually willing to come?
Then you're going to then you're going to have trouble. I would say it's only going to be helpful for somebody who has some level of self-motivation to learn about things. That often comes, by the way, from people who are just suffering so much that they're desperate, and they'll do whatever they need to do. So you never know with somebody if they're suffering and struggling, which it sounds like what you're saying they are. You never know how open they might be or might not be to something, especially something that's very different. One of the things that I say about the principles, as opposed to therapy, people often go to be helped to therapy, and this is not at all therapy. One of the big differences between this and therapy is that therapy is about looking at yourself. And this is not about looking at yourself. This is about looking at God. This is about looking at the godliness inside of you and trying to awaken that. You don't need to change anything. You are fine as you are. You are a godly soul. You just need to realize that.
Right. And does your wife deal with people who are of strong background and yet doubtful or have many questions about?
Absolutely. Yes.
Rabbi, can I ask you something?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Who's that? Yes, yeah.
I'm a little hesitant to say this because I don't want it to be misinterpreted. And I am so impressed with your dedication. But we are meant to be an ambodade, aside from virus. But we are such a small minority. And there's such a great need out there among our own people that it surprises me to extend out to the other nations.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you asked that, and don't be afraid to ask any question you want from me. And I did say when in introducing that part of my work that it is controversial. I did. I do recognize that. You will see that 95% of what I do is focused on the Jewish community, is focused on Klal Yisrael. If I do anything with the world out there, it is A, for Kiddush Hashem, which I feel will inspire Jews. It is B, to show Jews a broader sense of Judaism, that I feel they don't need to have that sort of denied them or hidden from them. Yes, the way that we are meant to be a Mamleches Kohanim and an Am Kadosh is by living as a Torah nation in Eretz Yisrael. and then you have the world comes to us, then you have the Malkat Shva and everybody else comes along to want to know what we're doing right, that they're not. Enachami, that is absolutely the Jewish model for changing the world, not going out there. But I feel there are nuances and there are subtleties in terms of how you impact Klal Yisrael, in terms of how you impact secular Jews today, that I feel involve reaching out to a broader community as well. I feel it's an important part of the Kiruv process and setup.
Chazak v'amatz. Amazing.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, yes.
Go ahead, and I think we're going to make that the last one. Go ahead.
Yeah. It's just a comment. I'm from Manchester, but I live in Israel, and I did belong to an organization which the rabbi may have heard of called the League of Jewish Women. And we went out into the Jewish community and did amazing voluntary work, but we also went out to the non-Jewish community. And at the time when you mentioned in December, that was just the time when we were at the busiest.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we gave everybody a time, and it was so appreciated. It was it's a very highly thought of organization, and I really miss it. So I do understand about going out and doing a Kiddush Hashem. You're quite right, and that's what we have to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Amen. Thank you.
Rabbi, thank you so much for being a guest on Drops of Inspiration. It's been really amazing having you and listening to you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And ladies,
pleasure.
I just want to tell you next week again. Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye-bye.
Is going to be an expert in memory. She's going to teach us and give us some tips on how we can all sharpen our memory. So I will send out on Sunday and look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much. Thank you.
Don't forget to send it out.
It was excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Joyce.
Thank you,
This was
Rabbi.
Joyce. Thank
Wonderful.
you. It was amazing as ever. Thank you.
Joyce.
Thank you, Joyce.
For all your time and effort, really. Thanks.